We're going to jump into a fan favorite, and listen, that may or may not be true, but I'm a fan of this show, and this is one of my favorite segments. So
All of that
this is a
true.
fan favorite. I'm calling it a fan favorite. We got Fluke or For Real. That's right. We're going to talk about more of these performances here, and we need to break down. Is this going to happen again, or is this just fluky? Let's talk about it. Let's jump in because we got a trio of Jacksonville Jaguars. I almost said Detroit Lions. Trio of Jacksonville Jaguars skill players here to talk about. Calvin Ridley with 24.1 points. Whew. Travis Etienne with 21.4. Whew. And Zay Jones with 16.5. I feel good about Calvin Ridley and Travis Etienne. I think Zay Jones, this is one of the games where he got his this week. And I don't think that's necessarily going to be too consistent. But with Etienne and Ridley, I feel fantastic about rolling these guys out my lineup. Wes, what do you think?
Ridley, book it. Etienne, book it. Zay Jones, book it.
Oh, wow. Really?
90% snap count compared to Ridley's 80% snap count. I think this is the way the Jaguars offense rolls. He doesn't need to be the superstar that Calvin Ridley is, where he had over 100 yards, but Zay Jones is going to find the end zone enough times to be worth a flex option. He had 7 targets, 5 catches. I say book it. Now, I don't know if he's going to be the best waiver wire option, but I think that he is going to do this enough that you can have him when you need him. Who knows what injuries are going to happen next week? So this is what they were saying in camp. Zay Jones was the one receiver who kept making the play of the day, the catch of the day, as they would look at it through camp. I like it. Zay Jones is someone I'm interested in a lot.
Fantastic touchdown catch. If you didn't see it, go check that out. Listen, we already talked about it. Brandon Aiyuk balled out. Fluke for real, Wes, but we know.
That's cookies.
That is cookies if I have ever seen it. That's for real, Brandon Aiyuk. Roll them out. Shout out, Nick. Listen, that's cookies. Brandon Aiyuk, cookies. Real quick, Aaron Jones. We already said it. Already talked about him real quick, but 26.7 fantasy points is something to look at and talk about. I think this is for real, but also I don't know if anyone has had as good a fantasy football performance on 11 touches.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, but it does seem like it did seem like, I know last year we were looking at this backfield and going, oh, it's going to be a split. Did not feel that way. Aaron Jones seemed to be the guy, and he was getting the snaps. He was getting the touches. A.J. Dillon did not really do a whole lot in this game. I think Aaron Jones is perfectly fine where you drafted him, and I think he's fine to stay in your lineup. I don't know if I'll say this. I don't know if he has another 27-point game this season. I think that we could have just seen his. Yeah, I think we could have just seen his best game of the year. But I'm fine keeping Aaron. I'm fine if you want to sell high, go for it. But I'm fine if you want to keep Aaron Jones in your lineup. It does seem like he's going to have a role in this offense.
100%. If you want to keep him, great. If you want to sell him, great. I think either option work. It's just as you said, 11 touches. That worries me. I'm going to lean towards Fluke, but I'm not going to demand that you sell high and try to get anybody that was drafted in the first 2 rounds. But A.J. Dillon did nothing, even though he actually outsnapped Aaron Jones. So that's part of. If I'm gonna have to choose, I'm gonna say Fluke. But
sure, no worries there.
I won't hate you if you disagree.
Yeah, no worries there. Fellow Packer, Romeo Dobbs. Listen, 18.6 fantasy points. In a change of events, Romeo Dobbs was a guy I was worried about drafting. He had a hamstring injury. Maybe it was some Cooper Kupp PTSD, but I was like, man, I was loving taking this guy towards the end of drafts. Not going to really do it anymore. 18.6 fantasy points, 4 catches for 26 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fluke for real with an asterisk, kind of, because I still kind of want to see how next week goes. Matt LaFleur, Matt LaFleur.
Matt.
There you go.
Matt
LaFleur said
Matthew.
Romeo Dobbs. Matthew
Matthew
LaFleur.
LaFleur.
Matthew LaFleur said that Romeo Dobbs was going to be on a snap count. He was not going to receive a full workload. So the targets worries me. Love the reports that we saw this offseason of Dobbs being Love's favorite target coming true and seeing 2 touchdowns off of that. I'm excited about the future of Romeo Dobbs. I loved Romeo Dobbs last year, though, so I could be a little biased. What do you think, Wes? Fluke or for real?
I agree 100% with you. I think it's for real, but it's also with an asterisk because we got to see what happens when Christian Watson is back and to also see what it looks like where they're not just blowing out the opponent. Because how many more times are they going to need to pass the ball when they aren't just coasting through the game with ease? So, for real, asterisks.
Yeah. There you go. Tyler Algier. My freaking goodness. It wasn't even like he stopped Bijan from having a good game. But Tyler Algier, 24.4 fantasy points, 15 carries for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns, 3 catches on 3 targets for 19 yards. That's 300 times more than Drake London. So there you go. There's that. Yeah. Tyler Algier, 5th-round running back out of freaking BYU. Okay.
Okay.
Fluke for real?
Okay. Here's what I'm going to say. For real.
Right.
But not better than Bijan.
Right.
And Bijan will continue to have better games than Tyler Algier. Yeah. But Tyler Algier will be the only other Falcon you should have on your team.
Yeah.
So
that's so crazy to say because
Desmond Ridder was so bleep blackin' whackin' packin' bad, dude, that Drake London ended up with 0 points because he was that bad. At least T. Higgins had targets. Drake had 1. I feel bad for Kyle Pitts owners. I'm very pessimistic about that, but just roll out Bijan and Tyler Algier. Algier is no longer the handcuff for Bijan. He's a flex option.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Tyler Algier will get 10 to 15 carries every single game this season. I think he will. I think he is locked in there because I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to run the football 40 times a game this year. And I think they're just we knew this coming into the year, but they run the football so much. Funniest thing, I don't know if you remember or you saw this, Wes. Desmond Ridder's first pass of the season, batted up in the air, and he catches it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Desmond Ridder had more catches than Drake London did in this game. Just a little note there to talk about. How sad is that? That is terrible. Listen, a trio of New England Patriots here. Mac Jones, 30.1 we talked about. Kendrick Bourne, 11 targets, 6 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns, 24.4 fantasy points. And then Hunter Henry, 16.6 fantasy points and a touchdown. Good call out, Wes, when we were talking about Mike Gesicki's injury, saying Hunter Henry was going to be a good week 1 start.
Thank you.
Definitely seems to be the case. What do we think about these 3, Fluke or for real?
I mean, no offense to Patriots fans, but I can't quite buy into Mac Jones just yet. I need to see it again. Yeah. As exciting as this is, I need to see it again. And I know it's the Eagles' defense. Don't get me wrong. But look, Justin Herbert barely got 200 yards and 1 touchdown against the Dolphins' defense. I don't think the Dolphins' defense is better than the Eagles', but I don't think Mac Jones is better than Justin Herbert. So let's see him do it again. So prove me wrong. I say Fluke. Do it again. Kendrick Bourne, I'm interested in. I like what happened. There's no really other passing option outside of Hunter Henry, who is absolutely for real. Hunter Henry is a lock for a tight end to be on your team if you don't already have him. If he's for whatever reason still on the waiver, I would consider him a waiver wire ad, but I've got someone that I really want to talk about. But Henry for sure, for real.
Yeah, 100%. Couple of Colts players here. Anthony Richardson, really solid debut, 22.9 fantasy points. And then Michael Pittman Jr., 23.7 fantasy points, 11 targets, 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown. Man, I'm starting to fear that Michael Pittman should have been way higher on all of our rankings because I know we were a little worried about Richardson's accuracy. 24 for 37, not great, but still not bad. 223 yards and a touchdown. He obviously runs in a touchdown as well. And Michael Pittman gets 11 targets, man. I think both these guys are for real. I don't know if you agree, but I think both of these guys are for real.
I do agree. I'm not ready to start Pittman, and I don't really have to necessarily, but
Yeah.
Richardson, though. Richardson's for real.
Yeah.
For those that did say, at the end of your drafts, where you're like, you know what, let me just see what happens with Richardson. I know he's the week 1 starter. Yes. Especially if you had any of the former quarterbacks we mentioned, like Burrow or Kenny Pickett or Daniel Jones or Lamar Jackson, at least you've got Richardson. Now, you're obviously not going to start him over Jackson or Burrow, but yeah, well, what a time.
Yeah.
And a close game, too. No joke, because the Jaguars are for real.
Yeah,
Man,
no.
what a time.
Colts look good. Anthony Richardson looks good. A couple other guys here to just talk about real quick. Kyren Williams. Oh, man. I was so excited for Cam Akers, and I can say effectively, I think Cam Akers is the backup on this team. I'm not even kidding you. Kyren Williams comes out 15 carries for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. And now Cam Akers had a decent day. He had more carries. But if you look at the distribution and breakdown of those carries, he got all of that when the Rams were up big with like 8 minutes left in the game. Kyren Williams was the guy in this Rams backfield for the majority of this game, playing well, 2 touchdowns. Kyren Williams, a guy we talked about towards the end of the year last year, I mean, you can tell I'm in on Kyren Williams. I think it's for real, as real as a Rams running back can get. I mean, the Rams played great, and they upset the Seahawks, so maybe this is a legit guy you need to be going to pick up. I'm not sure. What do you think, Wes?
Kyren Williams had a 65% snap count. Cam Akers had a 35%. Book it. Kyren Williams is the real deal.
That's enough to say. Yeah, Kyren Williams
He's the starting running back for the Rams.
Yeah, he is the starting running back for the Rams. Last two rookie receivers, guys that I love. Jordan Addison with 16.1 fantasy points and Zay Flowers with 17.7 fantasy points. I'm thinking both these guys are for real. I'm calling for real. What do you think, Wes?
I don't even need to talk. Of course they're for real. We've been so hyped on them all offseason.
So impressive.
Of course.
So impressive. Zay Flowers, 48% snap share, I'm pretty sure. 48% target share. I believe it was above 40. That won't continue when Mark Andrews is back, but Zay Flowers is the dude in the wide receiver room. Excited to see him go out there and play that well. I feel like all these guys I'm about to mention on the negative side of this are all for real, and it's a bummer to talk about, but let's talk about them real quick because we got Antonio Gibson, 0.8 fantasy points. Fluke for real.
For real. It's Brian Robinson's backfield.
Yeah, it is. That is so disappointing, man. I was ready to be hurt again. I bought back in, and I got hurt. There you go. Drake London, we already talked about it. That's for real. Don't even bother pulling him out in your lineup. Big ol'.
I've become such a hater of Drake London. I don't know how good apparently he went to a high school in LA, and I know some friends that went to school with him, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I don't think he's that great. I just tell them to their face.
Yeah.
I don't mean to hate on him. I just think he's not good for fantasy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Drake London, that's for real. Don't roll him out. Debo Samuel, 11.3 fantasy points. Listen, we talked about it all offseason. This is for real. Brandon Aiyuk is the guy. Odell Beckham Jr., 2 catches on 3 targets for 37 yards. That's about where we felt this was going. Yep. That's for real. Yep. Couple here that we need to talk about, though. Because T. Higgins had 0 points. This Bengals offense was just abysmal. but he had 8 targets. Listen, I'm not. We have just this performance to go on for the season. I'm calling Fluke, though. What do you think?
I am calling Fluke as well.
It's got to be, right? It has to be.
It can't be this. I mean, it was a horrible game. I mean, we actually shared it on our socials as well that Joe Burrow averages about 14 points a game in his career for week 1. And then every other game, it's 19 points on average. They're going to get better. It's going to be fine. Don't panic on the Bengals. Hang tight. If you don't have T. Higgins, now's a great chance to go try to get him for a great value. But I'm not worried. There's no way that is for real.
Yeah, on 8 targets, it's really tough to get 0 fantasy points. It doesn't happen again. This is fluky for sure. DJ Moore, 4.5 fantasy points. Hard stat line to look at. And I can only imagine what the Bears fans are thinking. We gave up so much. We gave up, picks, first overall pick. We got DJ Moore. And Justin Fields throws him the ball twice. In a game where they're down big. Like, what do we do? What do we do here? Fluke for real, Wes? Yeah. I mean, I know you were Uga Chaka hooked on a feeling. What are you thinking? Because you really came around and were high on DJ Moore. I want to know what do we need to be thinking with DJ Moore?
The feeling that is definitely Uga Chaka. No, I'm worried. I'm worried, but I can hold out another week or two. I can hold out. Because I saw what happened with the Bears, and outside of Roschon Johnson, who, speaking of which, I think is probably the Bears starting running back. I'm not too high on him, but outside of him, the Bears just were bad. That was just a bad game. It's kind of like the Steelers and the Bengals. That was just a bad game, and DJ Moore is much, much more affordable than T. Higgins. So if you want to just kind of throw in like, hey, here's a freaking, I don't know, name someone that had Jr. like, if it's someone that had like 10 points, you could be like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like DJ Moore's all that great. I need a wide receiver. What do you think? It's an opportunity to just give it a shot. I believe in DJ Moore. Yep. I'm going to call that fluke.
Yeah, I think that's fluky as well. Last one here. Tyler Lockett. Only 3 fantasy points. Tyler Lockett, I feel like, has these games every year. So I think this is fluky. I know he was also dealing with a potential head injury during this game. And he was out for a little bit. So I was very surprised to see the Seahawks play so poorly. But what do you think, Wes?
Not falling for it again. He's top 15. He does this every time. Week 1, he's so garbage. And then he's going to be there. He's going to be top 12. I'm not falling for it again. It's a fluke. Tyler Lockett's going to be the best wide receiver. I can't sit here in front of a camera that's being recorded and say, oh, this is for real. Tyler Lockett's a bust. Nope. He's tricked me so many years.
It happens.
No.
It happens all the time. He is always such an unsexy pick to make in your fantasy drafts. You never feel great. You're just like, I guess I'll take Lockett. I think he's going to do okay. And then he does this, and you freak out, and then he ends up top 15. Listen, stay the course. Tyler Lockett will be okay. Real quick, just a moment of silence for the Giants and Darren Waller, because, man, what that performance could have been was nothing like what we wanted. Better days to come for Darren Waller. Oh. Thank you. Better days to come for Darren Waller.